Everyone in Brownsville has a story to tell. These are their stories. You're listening to Brownsville Matters, KXIQ 105.1's podcast show, where we learn a little about everything from all walks of life from the wonderful people in our community. Our next guest hails from the Tar Heel state of North Carolina, and he is a local author and musician. Ryan McGinnis, welcome to Brownsville Matters.
Hey, Gilbert. Thanks for having me today.
I like to start things off with a fun curveball question, and I'm especially curious.
I'm very scared.
No, you're good. You're good. It'll be a fun one. Ryan, you've moved here 6 years, más o menos ago.
Yep.
What has been your favorite food from the Borderlands?
Oh no, he hits me with that one. That's a difficult one. So I think the thing. Okay, it's simple, but my a food that has just been a revelation to me is the Achiote chicken, the red chicken that you can get at Agave in Olmito.
Ooh.
Very specific because that's where I first got it. But actually, I first got it at my neighbor's. My neighbor was having a cookout, and they're grilling this chicken, and it's like bright red, and I'm like, "What is this?" And they're like, "Oh, it's like Louisiana flavored," and I was like, what?
Yeah.
And so I tried it, and it definitely was not Louisiana flavor.
No,
I've been to Louisiana, I've had Louisiana flavor. That is not Louisiana flavor,
No.
but it was really good. And then I encountered it at Agave, and it was the Achiote chicken or pollo asado or something. There's different names for it, but it's the bright red chicken.
Yes.
And I love the bright red chicken. There's a lot of other things I love, but the bright red chicken is high on my list.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, I agree. I am a New Orleans fan myself.
Yeah.
The Cajuns do their own thing incredibly well, but no. There's something about home meals.
Yeah.
Things that are from our area, our heritage, that really appeal to everyone.
Yeah.
So that is an incredible choice. I never heard Achiote the chicken. That's a...
Well, I don't... People call it different things.
Yeah.
I mean, some people... I mean, it's not listed as anything special on the menu. It's
Right.
just listed as chicken, but then you get it. It's listed as chicken fajita, and then you get it, and it's like bright red, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely had it, but I've never heard it referred to as Achiote the chicken.
Yeah. That's just... I did some digging, and that's how you make it. And so, I figured out how to make it myself. And, and of course I talked to the meat market manager at AV Lopez, because they also have the bright red chicken. Here I am just giving shout outs to all the local businesses, but AV Lopez has a meat market up past my house. And the lady there makes the marinades, and she was just delighted that I was into it. And she's like, "What do you do with it?" I'm like, "Oh, we make enchiladas out of it." She's like, "Oh my God," And so I don't know. I just make friends, and then she gives me a little extra chicken.
This just reminds me of a previous conversation we had, and it really speaks to your admiration and appreciation of local cuisine. That you took notes from local food influencer ArnieTex.
Yes.
To contribute to a local cookout.
Oh God, I love
or
ArnieTex.
carne asada, as we say.
I love ArnieTex. I have his cookbook.
You do.
And I actually missed. I'm sad. He was in McAllen. I think at the museum up there, and I missed getting to go see him. I was busy and didn't get to. I think it's one of those things where I was busy and the date slipped my mind, and then I was like, oh my God, I missed him. But I love ArnieTex. Yes, I do make. I make a lot of his salsas, although, I mean, my spice level my spice tolerance has went up greatly since moving to the valley.
Yes.
I mean, I always liked spicy food. I went through a phase where I thought I had some kind of eating problem. I thought I had some kind of stomach problem. I couldn't eat spicy food, and then I stopped drinking, and all of a sudden I could eat spicy food again. And so that was the problem.
Oh, okay.
The problem was too much indulging in one thing, And so now I can get into spicy food again, and my spice level has come up greatly, and it's through hard work. It's a lot of days of sitting there eating, and I've got sweat rolling down my forehead, and and now I'm used to it, and now I went back to North Carolina recently.
Yes.
And my brothers and I went out to lunch, and we went somewhere, and this place had some kind of Zing Zang sauce. It was supposed to be spicy, and so I got it on the side.
Sauce?
Yeah, I got it on the side because I didn't know what it would taste like. And then we took turns trying it, and I'm like, yeah, there's no spice in this. You know?
Meanwhile, everyone's suffering.
Because I'm used to, we're not suffering enough. I'm used to the valley, you know?
Right. Zing Zang sauce. Is that like a Southern thing, or?
I don't know what it was. I've never heard of it. That's why I got it on the side. Because, I mean, if it's spicy mayo or something like that, you're like, okay, I know what that is.
Sure.
Zing Zang, I had no idea what it's supposed to taste like, and I tried it, and I think it's ketchup. I don't know. If I'm being honest, I think it's just ketchup. I don't know. They were just trying to do something fancy, but it's just ketchup.
Yeah, maybe they ordered too much and they wanted to get rid of it with a fancy name.
We have a surplus of ketchup in the back.
Yes.
What are we gonna do with this surplus of ketchup? I don't know. Let's put a fancy name on it.
Zing Zang sauce. Ryan, let's talk about your origin story. So I understand you're from North Carolina, and if I remember correctly, you moved. Was it Nebraska or Kansas, one of those states in the Great Plains? And then you ended up here in the Rio Grande Valley.
Yes.
So tell us about how was your life growing up? Where exactly did you pick up music and writing? And how did you end up here in Brownsville?
Okay, I'll give you the Reader's Digest story because we don't have a few hours. It's
a fascinating one.
The music came from my dad. My dad used to be in a surf rock band back in the day. Nowadays he's gospel,
Wow,
so
okay.
But he still has his appreciation of that music. And there's a picture of me when I was like 4 years old with his Les Paul on my lap. So, so I've always I grew up around guitar playing, and I can still remember the smell of his amp, like the old tube amps when you turn them on. And I still remember that smell. It's very nostalgic to me. And so that was the music side of it. And the writing side, I grew up in Stanley, North Carolina, working class family, didn't always have babysitters and stuff. And so my mom worked in an insurance office in Stanley, and she would drop me off at the public library. And because she knew the librarian, and it was just down the street from her office, and she would drop me off there. Mm-hmm. What a different time that was. She would drop me off at the library and leave me there all morning, and then she would come get me at lunch. and in the afternoon, I would usually come back and hang out at her office. But I'd be left at the library for 4 hours, Wow. So I spent a lot of time meandering around the library and discovering stuff. And I'm a young kid, and I like spooky stuff, and I like science fiction and like all that stuff. And so, get into all this like Ray Bradbury and all this stuff, and thrillers and stuff that probably gave me nightmares when I was a kid, but it was cool stuff, And so that was always, my mom always encouraged that kind of stuff. I mean, she got me into, when I was young, I was in the academically gifted, like
honors classes,
program. Yes. Yeah, the honors classes and stuff. And then when, then about junior high, we moved to, they moved me to another school system for reasons that we're not going to get into here because it's just boring stuff. But, they moved me to another school system, lost all my friends, come to a new place, and all the, and I discovered rock and roll. And my dad, my dad says that ruined me.
Oh no.
I mean, not that I hadn't, I've been playing guitar, messing with guitar. And then when I reached about junior high is when I started getting really serious about that. And so all the other stuff, all the academically gifted stuff, sorry, I can't talk this morning. And, all that just kind of like, okay, we're going to rock and roll, and came out of school and joined a band and joined another band and ran, I ran a now not here, but legendary in the area, punk rock club called the Milestone Club.
The Milestone Club.
Yes. It was very much an underground punk club. It's basically just an old house and it's still there. It's still there. They call it the CBGB of the South, So,
okay.
Because, CBGB's the punk club from New York. And so I ran that, and then I joined a band, and I was in a band called My So-Called Band.
My So-Called Band.
We mentioned earlier, when we were talking before the show. And we got pretty big, and we played, and we had we were on an indie label, and then the indie label collapsed, and so we formed our own record label. And I learned a lot of stuff that I use nowadays in marketing and in my day job, my boring day job of marketing, and and then my more fun author career, like all the marketing stuff. We learned it doing the band stuff, because without a label, we had to do our own label, our own website, our own logos, our own, you name it. We had to do it, our own booking. And so, we did all that. And toward the end of that, I met Amber, and we always joke that Amber Yoko Ono'd the band, and she because Amber and I met on January 1st, 2005,
New Year's Day,
and by November of that year, I had left the band, and she and I had moved in together. And but it wasn't. No, I mean, I joke. It's a joke, and she can be mad at me for doing that joke on the air. But but no, the truth is, I was after like 9 years in the band, I was getting pretty burnt out, and I needed to do something different. And but Amber and I's life together, I started running an online music zine supporting Charlotte music.
Wow.
And well, I wasn't into being on stage anymore, but I wanted to support people. And so we did that, and we threw shows, and we did fun stuff. And eventually she finished her meteorology degree, which was her second degree.
What?
Yeah, my wife's a double scientist.
Oh, what's the other degree?
Sociology.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so she's a sociologist and a scientist. So, I aim high. I strike above my weight class.
Very good.
To earn that one. I've got a double scientist for a wife,
That's incredible.
But it's very cool, And so so she got a job at AccuWeather, and so we had to leave North Carolina, and we moved to Wichita, Kansas. And I had started doing a few acoustic shows before we left North Carolina, but it was nothing major. I had just overcome I didn't want to be on stage. And so, I'd overcome that. And so we were, I was doing some acoustic shows, went to Wichita. And this was when the Avett Brothers was like a big deal in that type of music and stuff. And they're from North Carolina. And so I got into the singer-songwriter scene there, and they're like, "Oh, you're from North Carolina? Oh my God, that's where the Avett Brothers are from." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I know their bass player, Bob Crawford." Because I did, I'd done work for him. And so, instantly I was in, I was in the Wichita scene, and I had a whole other music career in Wichita where I played acoustic music for like 6 years.
Wow.
So I was very lucky. And then Amber, of course, got a job with the National Weather Service here in Brownsville.
Yes.
And that brought us down here. And it was really funny because when she first told me, I'm interviewing for this job in Brownsville, and I'm like, what's a Brownsville? I've never heard of Brownsville. I've never heard of Brownsville. Right. And she's like, "Oh, it's a border town in Texas." And and I had the very wrong misconception of some dusty town out in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, I don't know, and then I saw a picture. And it was a picture of the Resaca with the palm trees. And then I saw the causeway, a picture of the causeway, taken from the top of the lighthouse, and you see the causeway going out to South Padre Island. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, what's this?
Wait a minute. This might be pretty cool,
It is.
And so, and we moved down here, and just in time for the pandemic to lock us down.
No.
Yeah, so we moved here like a month and a half before the pandemic locked us down.
Oh my gosh.
So we're here, and then we're stuck in an apartment together for like a year.
Wait, so if lockdown was in March, did you get to experience Char Days at least?
Yes, we did get Charo days.
Okay.
We came down and we got the island, and a couple times, like your first weekend, and you go out to the island. You're like, oh, this is pretty nice, because it's the off season, so you don't have to worry about traffic. And,
right.
And then Charo days, and it was like, yeah, this is really cool. And then they locked everything.
No.
I remember getting the call from Amber, and she's like, hey, they're gonna. We just talked to people, because she's worked for the weather service, and she's like, they're gonna lock everything down. She's like, go to the store, get stuff,
get everything,
get stuff, because we're gonna be locked down. And so, yeah, we went through that whole adventure, and but generally, I mean, I love Brownsville. The experience has been good. I'm an explorer, and so when I go somewhere new, I just instantly start like going and looking at stuff and finding places and showing up in weird spots like, bookstores, like little bookstores that have just opened. Or actually, well, the first time I met you, you were just a book cart at I think at Juice's or somewhere.
Well, actually, you kind of met me before.
Where did I meet you at?
Okay, so we just found each other on Facebook, right?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and I sold you chicken plates for my fraternity.
That's right. That's where I first met you, was the chicken plates. Yes, the chicken plates. I met you at 7th and Park. I had forgotten all about that until you said that, and I was like, oh, that's it. Because I knew I'd met you at like 7th and Park or Juice's or somewhere, and it was to buy. Yes, I mean, to people who know me out there, I mean, it makes perfect sense that the first thing I did was buy a barbecue plate from the studio. I'm very food oriented, like you said, I love Arnietex, and Fredsters, anything food oriented. I'm like, yeah, I'm in, I want to check it out. But so, but the author thing, kind of developed, back in North Carolina. I always have all these ideas, for I'm like, man, they should do a TV show, blah, 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 or they should do a movie, blah, blah, blah. And I always say behind every great man is a woman telling him to get off the couch. And in this case, it was Amber. And she's like, well, you're having all these ideas. Have you ever thought about writing them?
Yes.
And I was like, hey, I never thought about that.
I should get off the couch.
I should get off the couch and do something, and so, so I started writing outlines and synopsises, and and I have a whole file of them, and I've only done a handful of them, because one of the original ideas I did was I had this idea for like at the time it was like I've read a lot of Ian Fleming. Okay. The James Bond books. Yes. And so I wanted to do like a spy thing, among other things. I had all these outlines like horror stories, ghost stories, science fiction stories, all this stuff. And I was like, but I also had the spy story, and I wanted to do that. And what it developed into as I wrote the outline, I just chocked it full of stuff that I like, and stuff that I grew up on. It's very much a lot of my influences from like the 70s and 80s. And it becomes like this John Wick meets James Bond, Jason Bourne kind of story. Yeah. And I started piddling with it as a hobby. Sure. And then I started getting a little more serious about it when we went to Wichita. I was like, I really need to get serious about this. And so I started writing content started writing everywhere I could, because my first thing was I really need to polish up on my writing, because it hasn't been something that's been like a focus for me. And so I decided, I started writing blogs for clients, content for clients, like anything anybody needed written, I would write it, because I'm just trying to get my fundamentals down. And in the meantime, I would piddle around, write a few chapters here and there. It was a hobby, and then I started getting serious about it. And we moved to Brownsville, and I was almost done with it. And I finished it like because the pandemic, we're stuck at home. So I finished the book. And then I spent like a year editing it, because I didn't want to put it out because it's in the middle of the pandemic. And so I'm like, if I put it out, nobody's going to focus on this. Everybody's focused on the pandemic, know? And so I ended up coming out with my first book. Well, actually, back up. I actually had a short story that I wrote, like a ghost story. And that got picked up by, this is actually what caused me to get super serious about the book, was I had a short story and it got picked up by a site called Mandatory Midnight, which is like a horror. I don't even know if it's still around anymore, but it was like a horror website where people put up short stories and stuff, and they picked up my story, and that gave me the writing bug big time, And so I finally came out with my first book in 2021, and at the time the big advice was do a series. So I if you're going to make money as an indie author, you have to, and all that advice is good, but about 90% of the advice floating around online is garbage, but I mean it works for that person, but it doesn't necessarily work for you. So if you're out there listening to this, do your own thing, listen to the fundamentals, but do your own thing. But I came out with that series. I did the first book. I did the Osiris Initiative in 2022. In 2023, I got really ambitious, and I came out with a short story called The Musician's Daughter, which ties into the whole Xavier Green thriller series that I was doing. And I also did The Delicate Art of Death and The Firefly Collective. And then I started, I don't know, I was getting an itch the whole time. I am a huge Kurt Vonnegut fan.
Yes.
I love Kurt Vonnegut. Cat's Cradle is one of my absolute favorite books of all time. And I had read it again in about 2018, 2019, and it inspired me to write my own science fiction outline, and that becomes Terrestrial. It's always been called Terrestrial, always.
Which we have a copy of here in the studio.
There's a copy floating around the studio.
Yes.
But it was always called Terrestrial. There was a time I'd considered changing the name, but I did not. My wife was like, no, stick with that. And so originally it was more of a Kurt Vonnegut type story. It was more, there was a lot of comedy in it. There was a lot of, way more satirical than it ends up being, even though there is some satire in there. But I had that outline, and it's always been sitting there. And I'm doing all these Xavier Green novels. And every time I finish one, I'm like, man, I need to write Terrestrial. But then you're like, oh, but I got to keep the series going. Okay. And so we kind of broke the pattern. We had a health scare with my wife in late 2022, early 2023. And it kind of caused me to kind of back away from writing for a little bit because I had to concentrate on that. Then I wrote, I finally got around to writing again. And I wrote the Silent Death, which came out in 2023, and then I was like, and it didn't. So that one, I mean, not every book you're going to put out is going to be a zinger, and they had all done okay. Silent Death did not do that good, and it's partially my fault. I mean, I was dead set against doing ads at the time, but instead I was going to book a bunch of podcasts, right? And I recorded a bunch of podcasts with people, and every podcast I recorded for went out of business before the episode could come out. So Brownsville Matters, good luck. No, I'm just kidding. I'm on it. I know I broke that jinx.
We'll be on air next week as we're recording.
Yes, exactly. I'm not the kiss of death on these podcasts.
No. And to our listeners, we recorded this 1 week ago.
Yes. So it's still there. The building's still there.
Yes.
But yeah, I did that, and I was like, so I'm going to start writing Terrestrial. And the first thing I did was kind of switch it up a little bit, and because I can't, I mean, as much as I wanted to write like Vonnegut, I can't write like Vonnegut. Nobody can write his style but him. So so I got a little more serious. I modernized it a little bit. I still think it's a classic sci-fi story. Like one of the reviewers called it a classic sci-fi story, and I think it is at its heart, but I did a good job of modernizing it and wrapping it in our modern, our modern times. But I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to do with it. I started writing, and then the election happened. And I just went into a tailspin, because there is a character in this book.
Okay.
There's a character in the book. He's not a main character, but he is. I mean, he's one of the characters. President McGuffy.
Okay.
And President Eric McGuffy was a game show host. He like Bob Barker, Price is Right, and he ran for president as a just a publicity campaign, and the front runner got caught up in a scandal, and he accidentally became president. And so this guy, and it wasn't meant to be a specific stab at anybody. It was just more of how our culture nowadays
sensationalizes.
Yeah, well, it sensationalizes, and there's a lot of celebrity worship, and we're more worried about being entertained instead of whether the person's actually good at their job.
I see.
Does the person make you laugh? Do you want to have a beer with them? Oh, look at this guy. And so and it's and it's not just here in the U.S. I mean, it's worldwide. There's a lot of politicians that nowadays that were entertainers.
That's right. It's not just American
a lot of leaders. And that's a dangerous trend. I mean, in some cases it's worked out, and in some cases it has not. But with the election, I was like, oh crap, because I didn't really want to get caught up in all that, and I kind of honestly, I took some time off. I took time off and wandered in the wilderness, and as they say, and did side projects and dabbled in podcasts and did everything except write, and I was pretty miserable. And then one day, and I don't know who said this. It was just somebody on like Threads, said that as a creative person, you can't not create during chaotic times, because your art is how you process the world. And if you don't create, you're just bottling it up and you're making yourself miserable. And I was like,
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I wish I'd saved it so I could tell you who wrote it, because it's profound, but I was like, that makes sense,
Right.
and so that kind of got me thinking, okay, maybe I do need to write, and more so not just write in like a not write in just a generic way, but be very specific about what I'm writing about, help exorcise, these things that are driving me crazy. And then I was reading Kurt Vonnegut again and his advice and talking about how, as writers, we can kind of influence society a little bit. Like if you have ideas, if you're not happy with something in the world, write about it, because in a way you're going to put that idea in somebody else's head, and you can put ideas in people's head. And if you change one mind, I mean, you changed one person, you've changed the world. I mean, if you've changed yourself, you've changed the world, And so those two things got me back in the game, and got me fired up. I was like, oh yeah, I can use my art. Like, it's no longer like an esoteric thing. It's like, I can use this. This is a tool. And so I set about very intentionally. I did a lot of not really rewrite. I kind of changed the shape of what Terrestrial was going to be. I made the president a bit more isolationistic. I made him a bit more mean, a bit more self-serving. He was kind of a comedy character, and so I tweaked him to be a bit more, menacing, and I very much set up a world where these scientists are trying to do the work and trying to do, and we'll get into that in a minute, but they're trying to do their work, but they're almost held back by a government whose priorities are out of tilt with what's going on. And so there's a lot of red tape and there's a lot of being held back. And while that's going on, the organism or the thing or whatever, the antagonist is very much, they know what they want and they're just moving forward, and so there's that sense of, oh my God, we're falling behind.
So, could you go a little bit into details to what Terrestrial is about?
Yes. Terrestrial, in the book Terrestrial, at the start of the book, the Earth, mostly North America suffers. I kept it in North America because I didn't feel like,
I see.
It was going to be too long of a book if I had to deal with the entire world. So,
Yes.
so we kept it in North America. But there are a series of meteor impacts across North America, mostly in the United States, but there is one in Canada and there's like one in Mexico. And these, and that's a big enough disaster anyway, because I mean, these huge meteors hit. It's not like little specks like we saw in the news recently. And by the way, that is the best. Like right after I come out with a book about meteors hitting the Earth, there's all these news stories about meteors hitting the Earth. I was like, man, I could not ask for better promo. Yeah, that was like great timing, you know. But the meteors hit. Scientists are assigned to investigate these phenomena, because there starts being weird phenomena with the craters, such as like the vegetation growth is like out of control. Like an area where there previously was barely any vegetation, now it's like covered in vegetation, and so. They're investigating. The president is more worried about how it's going to affect his poll numbers than what's actually going on in the real world. And so there's a whole lot of start and stop, and you can't do this. And, and you're being pulled off this project, or funding's being cut because it's not, it's not little green men from Mars, so they're like, they don't understand it. But all the while, something pretty sinister is starting to form,
right.
And so they're just trying to get ahead of it, despite, the efforts of the government and the powers that be. They don't understand. They're very skeptical of what's going on. And so it's the story of the scientists trying to solve this problem while almost having one arm tied behind their back in the situation. At the same time, I had one of the meteors hits a satellite in orbit, and a fragment of it hits the International Space Station.
Oh no!
Damaging part of the station, and they get that fixed. But once they get it fixed and get that's a very fragile ecosystem.
Oh yes.
And when I had rewritten the book to remove some of the Vonnegut elements, the original first chapter was a very funny, like kind of very Vonnegut kind of chapter where a guy was going to be getting ready for work. He's got a crush on this girl that he works with, and he's going to finally ask her out today, and he's all getting ready, and he goes through his routine, and he's driving to work, and he hits the intersection and becomes the first victim of the meteor strike.
No! All the while he's mentally preparing for it.
Yeah, he's mentally preparing for it, and he just gets like blasted by the meteor.
No.
Sorry, thanks for coming, homie. But so that was the original, and I replaced that with the International Space Station, and I wanted to start the story in orbit, and very much like the cover of the book, and they see the meteors as they're coming down, and they're like. Oh, it's meteors. Yeah, we see that all the time. But then they see them making impact on the surface. And so that was going to be the start. And as I started writing the story, as I had, changed it around, I decided that I really liked the idea of what if one of these organisms got in the International Space Station.
Oh.
Because that's a very fragile environment up there.
Right.
And it's a very claustrophobic environment. And I'm like, we could work with this, you know? And so in the middle of writing the story, I paused and wrote this whole other story. Like I wrote the entire scenario that takes place in the space station, which is completely separate from what happens on Earth.
Okay.
And then I mixed that in. And so, got an even longer story. I was like, okay, now, cause I was feeling it, so I'm like, all right, now we're fleshed out, now we're good to go. We've got these two parallel stories. A guy that reviews a lot of my books mentioned that one of the writing styles that I have is I do a lot of parallel narratives where there's at least two storylines going on, and sometimes there's like 3 or 4 storylines going on, and sometimes they converge and sometimes they stay completely separate, and so now I had my 2 stories that I'm very excited about, both of them, and I had to do a ton of research into the International Space Station. I am just like, it's wild. I'm my hat goes off to those people, because that is a very fragile environment. Yes. That is a very, it's a very iffy environment. I would be terrified, but then take that and insert, okay, we're going to have this problem and we've got to fix this. And, and so you've got those 2 storylines going on, and it's really about 2 teams of scientists who are doing their best to overcome politics, or in the case of the space station, international politics. Correct. And, and territoriality and stuff like that, and just trying to overcome these obstacles. Now, that's my simple explanation for it. I have been told it's a story about humanity. It's a story about, mankind. And it's all that stuff. Right. It's all that stuff. It's about the human nature and trying to survive in trying times. And it's also, maybe it's my way of processing trying to survive nowadays, and all the challenges that we seem to face on a daily basis that just get worse and worse. And so, that's kind of, the book's my way of kind of processing that. So, and it's, it's out. People are loving it so far, knock on wood, it's been getting really good reviews, and it's been doing its thing. So, so I'm very proud of it. I feel like it's a very adult book compared to my, compared to my John Wick, James Bond, Spy-a-thon. Yeah. Yes. Those books tend to be a really high body count and move, like action set piece, yes. Very popcorn. And I feel like this one I actually wrote like an adult, and tried to be more into, let's like take our time and let's work it out. And
this book is more mature is what you're saying.
Yes, it's a more mature book, I think. My opinion. I say more adult, but I mean more mature. I know adult can have some bad conversations. What kind of book are you selling? I don't know. Maybe if it was an adult book, it would do really good. I mean, romantasy books are doing really good nowadays.
They are. They are.
And my wife's like, you should get a pen name and just write a romantasy book. And I'm like,
Mayan McGinnis.
Right. I'll just change the name. Maya. I'll change the first name to Maya. Maya Guinness or something. You heard it here first.
No, but I really like what you said, that you said with someone's comment that creativity could be a coping mechanism or therapy for external things out of our control. And I'll be careful how I say this because we're a nonprofit. I see it every time whenever there's a poetry event going on. People tend to voice their frustrations at issues that are happening around them. No, and I like how this is your way of doing it.
Right. Right.
Also, to our listeners, the cover has it's a view of Earth seen from above, and there are 4 meteors coming in from right to left, and the sun is peeking out behind the earth, just to get everyone a
yes,
better idea.
Yeah.
Could we circle back a little bit to the Xavier Green thrillers?
Yes.
Because I am very familiar with the covers themselves.
Because they're available at Buo.
Yeah.
As I continue to hype local vendors.
Well, this show's more about you than me. So who is Xavier Green? What is he up against? Who does he fight?
Xavier Green is an asset for a multinational organization called the Citadel. And Xavier Green is specifically an assassin. And when I first started, the I'm just writing this stuff. I don't know anything about like all that world, that much. And I called him an assassin a lot at first. And as the series has went on, I'm like, oh, I should call him an asset.
Yeah.
That's a better name for it.
Correct.
But that's what he does. He was a fixer. I mean, they bring him in. They're like, get rid of that person, do this, do that. The Citadel is this multinational organization comprised of individuals and companies and some country heads, and they kind of pull the strings behind the scenes. It's I lean into a lot of the stuff I've heard from my more conspiratorial friends, like my brother, I have a brother who's never heard a conspiracy he doesn't like and cool, it's his thing. But yeah, there's the big shadowy corporation, big shadowy organization pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Okay.
And he works for them. And in the first book, he gets sent on a mission. There's a bioweapon that's going to be released, and he needs to head that off. And he does. And the mission is simple. The parameters he's given is get the bioweapon before they can use it. In this case, it's a vial with a disease in it that, if released, is gonna it's like a plague. And so he obtains it, but then he finds his mission was supposed to be to obtain it, bring it back, and they were going to destroy it. But then his mission gets changed, and all of a sudden they want him to bring it back and give it to them. Oh. And he decides that I can't give them this because this needs to be destroyed. And so he kind of goes off on his own, and all of a sudden it's him being chased by the people he stole the stuff from, but also being chased by the people that he works for as he tries to destroy, he tries to destroy that bioweapon before anybody can get it. And the series just goes on from there. I mean, there's a lot of it's his adventures and all the conspiracies and all the stuff he keeps finding and how he's slowly trying to figure out not just his place in the world, but kind of, changing his understanding of how the world works and the Citadel works. And he's not so sure that these people are all the good guys. And, and it just builds into adventures from there, and actually the third, I kind of threw people for a loop, and I can admit that in hindsight. I mean, it made sense to me at the time, but the first two books are the multi-narrative, like Xavier Green books. The Tears of the Dragon is the first one, and the Osiris Initiative is the second one. And then the third book, there was a character, a sub-character, Stacy Martinez, she's one of the top 3 characters in the book, but she, I'm getting all these reviews and all this praise of her, people emailing me. And so the third book, I thought, man, I'm going to do something different. Because my wife will tell you that is what I always do. I'm like, I do something for a while and I'm like, oh, let's do something different. And the third book, The Delicate Art of Death, is actually a solo story for Stacy Martinez.
Wow.
And instead of being multi-narrative, I tell it all from her viewpoint. It's all like first person.
Wow.
And that threw some people for a loop, people tuning in, wanting the multi-narrative, blah, blah, blah. And so, so that threw some people for a loop. In hindsight, I can see, and that's my own thing as an author, and as an independent author, not being on a label or anything and having anybody tell me what to do, it was originally, that story was originally going to be like a, what we call a lead magnet. It's when you give away a story for free on your website in exchange for people signing up for your newsletter.
Gotcha.
And I was going to use it as a lead magnet. And then I just, I liked the story too much, and I liked the title too much, and I was like, I don't want to waste that on lead magnet,
No.
Let's just do it as a book, and so I put it out as a book, and so so it's good, but I think it lost me some readers because you got people tuning in to Xavier, they want to see Xavier Green, and instead they've got Stacy Martinez, and I mean, it was still, I think my wife still says it's one of her favorite stories I've ever written, and I think it's really good. I like it because it was different, It was more of, there was a little bit of the spy stuff, but it was mostly like a crime thriller where she goes back to small town Kansas to visit her family, and just try to get away from things because she's beat up after the previous book, and she's injured, and she also has a duffel bag full of stolen money that she took from the Citadel. And so, and so she's got this money, and so she goes to the town, and the money gets her in trouble, and there are people chasing her from, her involvement with the Citadel. And then she also blunders upon what turns out to be a serial killer in the small town. But a whole lot of it is her going, is this really going on? Is this serial killer thing real, or am I just reading too much into it? Because, she's paranoid, and she's like, that's the world she's been living in. And so she's like, am I reading too much into this? Or, and so I think it's a really good story. It's kind of brief. It's kind of short for my stories, but it's good. But I did that and kind of threw people off. But then we got back to form and did the Firefly Collective and the Silent Death. And I will say on here, I've mentioned it in another podcast, but there is another Xavier Green coming that's going to kind of wrap up. It's going to kind of wrap up the Tears of the Dragon saga. Like, I'm not going to say for sure it's the end of Xavier Green, but it's probably the end of that series. We're going to tie up the loose ends, and let that one be, because I feel like, even though the Silent Death didn't do that well, I think some of that falls on me for my marketing. And I know a lot of people read these books. So I'm like, I want to give them closure. A friend of mine's like, oh, if that book didn't sell, just drop that series. And I'm like, nah, I can't. Once again, online advice. You're told, well, if the book doesn't sell, drop that series and just move on to something else. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm emotionally attached to it.
Right, right.
I can't just drop it. I didn't become an independent author to think like a business. I want to think like me for a while, and be like, I got to tie that up, because I would want, if I was reading that, I wouldn't want the series to just suddenly stop. I would want closure. So we're working on that. I have a synopsis. I have a full synopsis. So that means that a book's coming relatively soon. And so, moving on, and there's a lot of irons in the fire, but that's one of them. So Xavier Green lives.
Wonderful. That's the thing that I've heard a lot from some of the local independent authors that I've worked with, because some of them also want to express themselves, but there's another faction that wants the money.
Oh no, yeah, but I think, and I think that's important, and I think, like, people write for different reasons.
Right.
Some people write just to write, and some people, I've heard like 1 million people be like, well, I just want to write. I don't want to market my book. Well, here's the thing. You can. I'm telling you right now from experience, you can write and not market the book.
Right.
And nobody will read it. And if nobody's reading it, what's the point? Like, I want people to read my book. I do. Yes. I want to make money. And I think Terrestrial is an example. You can write things the way you want to and express your frustrations and blah blah blah, and still make money, because Terrestrial, as we're sitting here, is the best-selling book I've ever done.
Whoa, how many copies?
It is. Well, I'm not going to talk numbers, but it had the best opening month of any book I've ever had.
Whoa, and it just came out.
Yeah. It came out last month. Its first month was the best month I've ever had.
Oh my!
For a book, and the sales this month, it has already. We're like halfway through the month now. And we've almost sold as many copies as we sold last month.
Wow.
So it continues. And it's partially smart marketing on my part.
Sure.
You have to get out in front of people.
Right.
And people that aren't comfortable with that, I get it.
Oh,
but I buy ads. I spend money on ads. And if you don't have money for ads, I get it. But you have to do something. You have to raise you have to be on podcasts. You have to get out there and talk to people, but you have to somehow raise and elevate the visibility of the book,
right?
Because that is your biggest challenge nowadays. I think whether you're a traditional author or whether you're independent author, the biggest challenge nowadays is getting your book in front of people.
Correct.
Because there's a bajillion books out there, and I'm not even, there's all the crap AI books, that people are writing, and I'm not even going to get into that, but it floods the market. It's like we were talking about I was talking with somebody the other day about the fact that the door to self-publishing has never been easier.
Right.
Like you got KDP, you got Draft to Digital, you got Ingram. And so it's super easy if you want to put a book out there. And if you want to make a decent looking book, there's Canva, there's I used Vellum to format Terrestrial. That's the first time I've ever used Vellum. It's for Mac only. But I paid, they had like a Black Friday sale, and somebody said it was worth it, because it can be quite expensive, but I got it on sale. And I figured it was worth it if it makes the book look good. And I'm telling you, this is the best looking book I've ever done, regardless of whether it's well written or not, which I tend to think as the author it is. But as far as the look, it made a difference. Vellum, you can use Canva if you're not. I can do graphic design. I've done graphic design, and so it's all, none of that's foreign to me. But if you have trouble with it, you've got Canva. There's all these ways that have lowered the bar, and that's great because that means more people are getting to write books and do stuff. But it's also the flip side of that is that there's also, a bajillion books flooding the market all the time. And so you have to do what you can.
You have to stand out. Yeah,
you have to stand out. You have to put, I'm lucky enough, Terrestrial is very on genre. It's very, if you look at the cover, you can tell from the font, from the planet, the meteors, that's a sci-fi book.
It's sci-fi.
It's a sci-fi book. And so that helps. The Xavier Green books are a bit more blurry on the genre. They're an action thriller, but they're also kind of this and that and kind of espionage. And so, and so it's harder to find its audience. And I think that's what I'm attributing to Terrestrial doing so well is one, sci-fi is hot right now. There's a lot of sci-fi series, sci-fi movie, Project Hail Mary, all that stuff. So it was very fortunate timing. And Artemis, the moon mission, holy cow, dude.
That was amazing.
Oh my God. I've seen images. There's images I saved on my phone, like where you see the separation of the vehicle, and they're streaming it live. Like I'm sitting there watching it on the TV, and you see the one ship that's hooked into the other ship, and they just come apart, and I'm like, that looks like something out of a movie.
But it's real.
That's taking place
there
right now. And so it's and then of course we talked about the news stories about the meteors. So that all, I think that's all kind of contributed to Terrestrial being able to, I can share it on a sci-fi group on like Threads or Facebook or something, and people are like, oh, I'll buy that, know. And so, whereas, Xavier Green's a bit harder of a sell, but, but you have to think about all those things. I think as an independent author, you have to, if you're going to be serious about it and you want to make money and you want people to buy your book, you absolutely have to acknowledge the business side of it,
right?
And you have to have some savvy on it. Right. I've read a lot of books about Amazon marketing, about Facebook ads. I watch videos, I watch webinars. I'm always, trying to absorb as much of the business side of it as I can, and I don't think. There's a lot of people like, but I'm an artist. I don't want to be. That's cool. I'm an artist too. I do goofy artist stuff, man. Like me throwing out that Stacy Martinez story in the middle of my series. It's just what I felt like doing. You know. And so I do a lot of. I see myself when I'm writing. That's my art. When I'm playing music, that's my art. But you have to know how to get your stuff in front of people because I do derive joy from people enjoying my books. So I want to get my book out there, and people to read it, you know, and that way I can obsess over my dashboard and look and see how many books I've sold. That's my nervous habit is I'm like, well, let me see how much the book sold. And my wife's like, would you stop doing that? Stop refreshing your dashboard. It's okay. And I've gotten better at it, you know, but I am still, I do, it's a wonder I haven't, while we're sitting here doing the podcast, I haven't whipped my phone out and go, let's see how many books I've sold. Well, it's like that little hit of dopamine.
Yes. Well, right. It certainly must be. I appreciate your discretion, but it certainly must be an interesting amount if that's the case that you get that little dopamine rush every time you look at the screen.
Well, I'm joking, or am I?
You also brought up something that I want to touch on, considering that professionally I do this sort of thing. You brought up Ingram, specifically
Yes.
Ingram Spark.
Yes.
Now it happens, and I say this specifically not as a bookseller, but to our listeners who may be interested in self-publishing, more so. It is very common for people who write a book, they go through the self-publishing process to want to see that book at a bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is if they go through the typical self-publishing routes, bookstores may not necessarily have access to them
Yes.
from their distributors.
Yes.
So it's heavily recommended that especially if it's a book that could be marketable, if it could fit in the store's inventory, that they go through a service like Ingram Spark.
Mm-hmm.
That way, it's more practical for the bookseller to just edit through their big order of books for that week.
Yeah. And there's several ways to do that. I mean, I think it's when you're making a book, you need to and I do this. Look at the books that are on the shelves. See what size they are. See what's selling. See what's on the shelves, and then design your book to look like that.
Yeah.
And to be like that, because it's gonna make it easier on booksellers. And also, but there's three ways. You mentioned Ingram Sparks, and you can sign up for Ingram and publish your book through Ingram.
Mm-hmm.
There is also Draft to Digital, which Draft to Digital also uses Ingram. It acts as a middleman.
Okay.
And so there's from an author's perspective, there's a bit higher fees using Draft to Digital, but I use it because there's ways to get it into. You can pick which services you get it into, and so I've only used it for Terrestrial.
Okay.
I've only used it for Terrestrial, but it's good for getting your stuff into libraries, Kobo, Barnes and Noble, stuff like that. I mean, when I say Barnes and Noble, I mean the website. I mean like Nook and the website.
Right.
You're not going to get getting your book in an actual Barnes and Noble store is a whole different process.
Yes, I can imagine.
It's a very difficult process.
I can imagine.
But yeah, I mean, and getting it in any bookstore. I mean, even Buo, like Gilbert's not gonna, just spontaneously go through and just buy a bunch of books. He has to know about your book. So once again, raise the visibility of your book, or do like I do and just go in and ask Gilbert. Hey, Gilbert, I got a new book coming out. Can you put it in your store? But if it wasn't in Ingram, it would be a lot more difficult to get the book out. We'd have to do it through consignment or something.
Right.
As it is, I can call you, or I can reach out to different bookstores and I can convince them to do it. And it's easier because I can be like, well, it's in Ingram, and they're like, oh yeah, cool.
Exactly.
That, instead of going through this whole process where you have to mail them books and stuff.
Right.
But there's also KDP, which is Amazon. That is Kindle Direct Publishing. And of note, the Xavier Green series is technically an Amazon-only series. I did not release it wide, but all the copies, everything except Tears of the Dragon, are in what Amazon calls expanded distribution. And by it being an expanded distribution, that means that it will show up in Ingram.
Yes.
And people like Gilbert can order it for their bookstore.
Yes.
In the case of Terrestrial, I decided to go wide. I wanted to not limit myself to Kindle. If you go, Kindle Direct Publishing has Kindle Unlimited. It's their subscription service. It's where you pay a monthly subscription, and all the books that are in KU, you can read them for free on your Kindle, and that's cool. It's not necessarily cool for the author because you get paid like pennies compared to what you would. If someone actually bought your ebook or your paperback, but those are the options that are out there. You can do, there's KDP with KU, but if you're in KU, you can't be on anything except Amazon.
Okay.
And you can use their expanded delivery, or distribution, but you're still just going to be in Amazon, whereas if you go wide, Terrestrial is not available on Kindle Unlimited. It is only available. It's on Kindle. It is on paperback on Amazon. It's on paperback on Barnes and Noble. It's available on Smashwords, which probably most people don't know what that is, but I mean, readers know what it is. But bookshop.org, which is a wonderful service. I've talked about this online. I'll talk about it on here. If you want a cool way to buy Terrestrial and still help out local bookstores, if you want to buy it online, go to bookshop.org.
Yes.
And you can choose a local bookstore. In this case, I would choose Buo. and you can buy Terrestrial, and the profits that would normally go to bookshop.org will go to Buo. So you can buy it through them and help your local bookstore, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah. You know, but yeah, I mean, going through, I went for Terrestrial. I did KDP for the ebook on Amazon and the paperback, and then Draft to Digital. I also did a paperback and for everybody else. So there's technically 2 different copies. They're mostly the same. I've ordered it from both distributors, like author copies. They're mostly the same. There's Amazon puts in like a few blank pages at the end. I don't know why, but you know, they just like stuck a couple blank. There's like, you know, the Amazon books are maybe a fraction thicker than the other one, you know, and maybe the cover is a little darker through Draft to Digital. I don't know, but it's mostly exactly the same. But you know, but that's, you know, that's getting in the weeds there for anybody that wants to self-publish. You know, there's Gilbert and I giving you a little, you know, how that works. You know, but yeah, but if you go through Draft to Digital, you do get to do Barnes and Noble and Kobo Plus and bookshop.org and all the there's some foreign distributors. There's like a German one and I think an Italian one, and you know, and stuff like that. And then you also have like all the library apps, you know, that you can get into the libraries, which of course I am not only a big supporter of local bookstores, I'm a huge supporter of libraries. Oh, for sure. Incredible. And I love Brownsville's library. Yeah, like the library on Central, the main library. I've been to that one, and I've been to the Southmost, and both of them I'm like, this town has great libraries, dude. You know? I love those places. And you know, fight for your local library. You know? Yes. It's a very important resource.
Yes, and also literally every single purchase that we make, the sales tax, a good chunk of that, or a small chunk of that, goes back to Brownsville, and a small chunk of that goes to the library.
Exactly.
So we're all putting. We're all pitching in to make it an asset to our community.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
As of recording, it is actually tax day.
It is. It is tax day.
Yes. So, so on a more federal level, it goes to finance the International Space Station, Artemis, and some of the other things we're talking about.
We're supporting all those things.
Yes.
We're supporting all those things.
Yes. Again, I'll be careful how I say this. Whenever it is tax day, I like to just focus on the good things. let's just leave it like that.
Right.
National parks. That's a good one.
Yes.
The mail service.
And you know what? And I've done my taxes, so I'm completely at ease on tax day.
Yeah, me too.
2 days ago, I might not have been as at ease, but today I am okay. I'm copacetic today. You know?
Very good. Hey, Ryan, do you think maybe the Rio Grande Valley may be a setting in a future project of yours?
I've went back and forth on it. I was involved, and this is going to sound so bizarre, but this is the kind of adventures that happens in my life. But I was involved in the local Lucha Libre scene.
Oh my gosh.
Briefly, yes. I was doing some marketing for them and hanging out at shows and stuff. And I had a friend that just wants me so bad to write like a Lucha Libre detective novel or something. I love it. Yeah, where the main character is like he's a luchador, but he's also like trying to solve this crime and stuff.
That's an incredible idea.
I think it's really cool. I'm hesitant because I do not. I've been trying, but I do not speak enough Spanish that I feel like, because I feel like a character like that would have to be, there would have to be a lot of Spanish in it. And I have too much respect for the culture to kind of, halfway do it, you know? Yeah. So, but if somebody wants to work with me on it, let's do it, you know, because that would be a fun project. Yes. You know? That would be a very fun project, but I would need somebody to help me with that, to assist me with that. Mm-hmm. But there's a friend of mine that would be very happy if I actually followed through on that, because we joked about it. You know? He wants me to do that, and he also wants me to do some type of giant monster, like a kaiju book, you know, like a giant monster book. Right.
Like a Godzilla Mothra.
Yeah, let's do a Godzilla book, you know. He would be very happy if I did those 2 books, you know. No, I checked my phone a minute ago because I believe yesterday was my parents' anniversary.
Oh, very good.
Right. When you said tax day, I was like, oh my God, yesterday was my parents' anniversary. And I do believe and I could be wrong, and I'm just going to say it on air. I do believe today is my mother's birthday.
Oh, wow.
Because I believe it was I believe they got married, and then like the next day was her birthday. So happy birthday, Mom! If you're watching this, if you're still watching, she probably started watching. She's like, I'm not watching this. But she's like, I've seen him talk.
Well, it'll definitely be a happy belated birthday since it'll be
yes, belated. But on the day of taping, it was her birthday. So there we go. So it'll be belated. How about that? It's the thought that counts.
Yeah. Ryan, what is the impact that you want to make in Brownsville? And beyond.
I don't. What kind of impact do I want to make? That's a big question.
Mm-hmm. That's
not a question I ponder often. I'm just trying to survive, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to write books and survive. No, I think my thing is that I believe a lot of times if you get outside of, I've come down here and been exposed to the border culture and to La Frontera and to Brownsville, and I love it. Yes. And I think in a lot of ways, I've seen my job since coming here and loving this culture and adapting to this area is to kind of be an ambassador, to people, because there's a lot of misunderstandings with down here and how it is. And I think it's a wonderful place. And I think there's a lot of growth going on. I think some of it we got to be really careful about because I think there's progress, and then there's stuff that gets wrapped up and disguised as progress, but it's not, and so we have to be very careful and protect what we have down here, and there's a fragile ecosystem, and as far as the environment goes, and the birding and the fish and the wildlife. Yes. I'm very, very, very plugged into that. And so to me, I get a little worried, with some of these projects that are popping up, and and I hope that we can move forward in a way that, that is healthy for the city and healthy for the environment. And so I think that's my thing down here is I think it's not, I don't know how much of an impact I can make on Brownsville other than just to be here, but to support that culture and to try to dispel, try to change as many people's minds as I can, because there's a lot of misinformed people and a lot of misinformation, and Brownsville's a wonderful place, and the Rio Grande Valley is a beautiful place. And so I think I've kind of unofficially become an ambassador. Yes. Because I go and I talk to people, and you'll see somebody that may have gotten some bad info, and like a cousin or an uncle or whoever, and you gently correct them, and you're like, well, no, actually it's like this. And they're like, really? And we've actually had we've had relatives come down here and visit and be kind of leery, from what they've seen on whatever news show. And but then now they come every year because they're like, oh my God. Yeah. By the end of their visit, they were just like, oh, it's amazing down here. I'm like, yes, it is. This is a very amazing place. I feel very lucky to have found Brownsville, to have ended up here by accident.
Yeah, I remember that we were talking about that and how people, may have been misinformed. We were talking about this at a rooftop networking event at UTRGV.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
Yes, the funny thing of all was the Rio Grande was over there, right beside us.
Right, we're looking at the Rio Grande. We're looking at Matamoros. Yes. We're like, hey, that apartment building over there is in Matamoros.
Yeah, exactly. And we were perfectly safe and fine.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. When I first moved down here, I said something about walking my dog, and somebody asked me, do you feel safe walking your dog? And I'm like, yes. Do you feel safe walking your dog? I mean, yes, I feel safe walking my dog. I mean, same thing. I mean, what's somebody going to do? Say hello to me? Yeah. I mean, here I can't go down the street without everybody that passes like waves at me. Sure. I mean, it's a good place. Yeah. So, but I think it's been misrepresented on the news for purposes, because this is a nonprofit, so we have to keep this kind of safe. But it has been misrepresented, and I think all those are false. And I just want everybody to see what I see, And so maybe I should write a book about Brownsville. I don't know,
Yeah. And not to mention, Brownsville has been ranked the 8th safest city in America.
Right. I mean, It's far. If you look at the crime rate, it's actually far safer than. I think this is the safest city I've lived in.
That sounds right.
I think the crime rate, yeah, because I've lived in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've lived in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, Charlotte is a city of 8 million people.
Oh dear.
And yeah, the crime rate's like
naturally
out of control, you know. But I mean, you cram that many people into that area, you know. Right. So yeah, no, Brownsville's the safest place I've lived. I love Brownsville. You know, I'm not just saying that because I'm on the Brownsville Matters podcast, but you know, I do. Gilbert will tell you, I'm not doing that just for the podcast. I do love Brownsville.
No, absolutely. That's abundantly clear, and that's why I reached out to you. Hey, Ryan, who do you credit the most to make you the man you are today?
Oh, that's another hard question. I'm an amalgamation. I'm an amalgamation of a lot of stuff. I mean, you know, my dad pushed me to music, even though my musical taste does not reflect his musical taste. But you know, and he hasn't always been cool with that, you know. But nowadays he appreciates it. You know, my love of guitar and stuff. I think, like I said, my library stuff, the stuff that led to me being a writer, probably started with my mom. You know, and of course, a good bit of it. Came from, you know, like bandmates and friends over the years. And so I think I'm an amalgamation of everything. I don't know if there's any one person that I would credit over everybody.
Right.
I think I'm a group effort. I'm very much a group effort. I mean, and right down to, you know, my wife is very supportive.
Yes,
well,
yes.
I mean, if it hadn't been for my wife, you know, I got laid off. I got laid off in 2009, I want to say it was 2009. And instead of looking for another job, I was doing construction at the time. But I was also building websites for people on the side, and which is another thing you pick up when you're in a band and you have to do your own label and stuff. You have to do your own website. So, you know, so it's all connected. Yeah. And when I got laid off, instead of looking for another job, I just started freelancing web design and started my own business. And a lot of wives would have been like, no, you need to find another job. But she believed in me and was like, no, let's do it, you know? And so, you know, and that led to a lot more freedom doing other stuff. That led to her being able to go back to school. Which led to her going to AccuWeather, which led to us moving to Kansas, which led to us moving to Brownsville. You know, it's all connected, you know? So it's just all one big patchwork quilt, you know, but her support is a big part of it, because she believes in me and she believes in these crazy ideas and lets me do stuff, you know, like, oh, I'm going to write a book. Okay, fine. Write a book, you know, whatever you want to do, you know, just do your thing, you know? So, I mean, I give a lot of credit to my wife, and also she has to put up with my craziness 24/7. And that's a lot of effort, you know. You get me in short bursts. She has me all the time, you know.
Wonderful. Yes, a shout out to Amber. All right, Ryan, final question. Okay. And it's the same final question that I've asked everyone, and I really want to hear what you have to say about this. So imagine there is a giant coliseum, a giant arena, a giant stadium. There's 200,000 seats. Every single one of them is filled with each and every member of the community. 200,000 is the population of Brownsville. You're walking down the middle of it with a microphone in your hand, and given 1 to 2 minutes to say something to the entire population of Brownsville, Texas. Ryan, what would that message be?
Oh, Lord. Boy, I wish I'd have had this question ahead of time to think about it. To those who don't know, we're taping this at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I ingested caffeine, so hopefully I can do this, you know. I think I would say be proud of who you are, be proud of your culture. I have never seen a culture that is so vibrant and so happy and so, you know, they celebrate themselves, you know, and I come from small town, you know, North Carolina. It's not like that. They don't celebrate the culture like that. Like, this is such a vibrant culture. And I think be proud of who you are, and also be proud of the growth. I mean, Brownsville has grown so much since I moved here. And, but I think, like I said earlier, you know, protect what you have.
Right.
Cherish what you have and protect it, because there are people, as you grow and as you change and as you become more popular, there are people that are going to come here and want want their own slice and want their own take, and it's not always going to be, it's not always for the best.
Correct.
It's not always, what like I said earlier, what's being wrapped up as progress is not always progress. It's not progress if you're hurting and you're accidentally killing part of your culture, and killing part of your resources, So I think we live in trying times. I mean, we were in a drought. We're in a drought right now, even though I can't convince. Talking to a guy the other day, and he's like, "Oh, you need to water your grass," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, we're supposed to water it like twice a week." And he's like, "I water mine every day. I don't care." And I'm like, "Dude, we're in a drought, man." And you have to be more cognizant of it. I mean, we are stewards of our world.
That's right.
We have to take care of our world. There's a reason there's an Earth on the front of Terrestrial. I mean, we have to take care of our world. This is our world. This is all we have.
Right.
We're not going to pick up the entire world and move to Mars. That's not going to, I mean, it's fun to talk about, but you're not going to be able to move the entire population of Earth to Mars. I mean, you have to take care of what you have, so take care of your resources. I mean, we have shortages of water, Corpus is about to run out of water. I mean, we have to be careful. We have to protect what we have, and we have to cherish it.
Yes.
And so that's my message,
Oh my God. Then the crowd roars.
or they're like, I got to go home and water my lawn.
No, but I mean, it is true. It's absolutely true. And, we were talking about books earlier. The best-selling book of all time is the Bible. And it literally says in the first chapter of Genesis that man is tasked to be a steward of the earth.
Right,
yes,
right. But there's a lot of people nowadays that try to, well, it's all preordained anyway, so I don't have to take care of anything. It's like, no, yes, you do. No matter what book you go by, you really need to take care of.
Exactly.
I mean, do you sweep your floors at home? Do you vacuum? Actually, some of these people, I don't want to know. I have friends, I don't want to know what their apartment looks like. but do you take care of your house? I mean, do you take care of your yard? I mean, take care of your world.
Right.
Take care of each other.
Right.
Because I mean, there's a lot more. I think that's another message I could add to my message to the 200,000 people is that our diversity is our strength. I think there's a lot of people that would there's a lot of division, and there's a lot of people that are divided based on how we look or how we sound or whatever.
Or what we think.
And how we think. Yeah. And I think, to me, variety, there's an old saying, variety is the spice of life.
Right.
I mean, to me, I think our differences are great, and I like to explore them, and I like to, that's one of my, I mean, I've loved down here because it's not my culture, but I've loved it, and I've experienced it, and it keeps life interesting, and so, so I mean, that's really, I got off point because I got attacked by the table, but no, I mean, diversity, I think our diversity is our strength. And I think we need to take care of each other, take care of the environment and take care of each other as best we can. So that's it. I'm not going to say anything else before the table attacks me again.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for not just your time, but for being really a creative asset to Brownsville.
Thank you.
With all the books you've written. Actually, do you still perform?
So yeah, I performed, and then I had my last show in Wichita, and I moved here with the intent of doing music again. And then we had the pandemic and we had the lockdown, and I did some songs online, and recently I've started, I'll put a video up once in a while on my threads of me playing guitar. And so I haven't like I meant to. Okay. And then the pandemic like sidelined me, and I kind of embraced the author thing full on.
I see.
And so I have not, but will I in the future? I mean, with me, you can't ever tell.
Well, if that hiatus ever ends, we could certainly revisit that. But in the meantime, thank you so much for being a creative asset to Brownsville through your writing, putting your voice out there, and certainly your outsider's perspective of your appreciation. I will certainly make the argument that you actually appreciate our city more than a lot of people that have lived here their whole lives.
I think that's common.
Yeah.
I think that's common when you live somewhere your whole life. Like I met a guy when we first, he worked with my wife, and we moved here, and he hated it here. He couldn't wait to get out. Like he kept trying to transfer to another office because it's where he grew up. And I get it. When you've grown up somewhere and been around it your whole life, maybe you don't get it, but then if somebody else comes in and they've been somewhere else and they come here and they're like, oh, this is like really cool, So I get that. I get that.
No, but thank you. I feel like your heart's in the right place, your head's in the right place, and yes, Ryan McGinnis, available where books are sold. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us today on Brownsville Matters.
Thank you very much, Gilbert.
This is Michael Quantz with the Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts, here to tell you about our podcast, Brownsville Matters. Everyone in Brownsville has a story to tell, and these are the stories. We broadcast these stories every Friday at 5 p.m. and every Sunday at 3 p.m. on KXIQ 105.1 FM on your radio dial. You can also catch these stories rebroadcast on our YouTube channel for Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and smash the notifications if you want more information about these stories that you watch and listen to.